Okay, we are here. We are ready to go. Sorry about that. I was just announcing the stream a bit. Raven is red. Thank you very much for the 4 month subscription with Prime. Very much appreciated. Uh, and Raven says, "Yay, stream, haha." Yeah, big shout out to Raven. Raven actually makes Flesh and Blood videos on YouTube and has much better production values and overall editing and so on than my own content. So shout out to Raven over here. Not just for supporting not just for supporting this channel, but also for his own work in the community. All right, guys. So without further ado, today's stream we're going to be a little different than some of the stuff that we've been doing in the past. So we're going to be doing a run through of the video from the LuckyGaming TCG Blitz Open event that was played on Saturday. So I was playing in that event. I was doing actually some official coverage for that event. So I was streaming. The way it was going to work was I was going to stream my own games, and then once I got knocked out, I was going to switch to being a commentator and go ahead and commentate the other games that were going on instead. But I actually ended up making it all the way to the finals, so I ended up just doing my own games, and so this was originally streamed with player audio, but at that time so I didn't end up doing the commentary, and in one of the games that I streamed there was some kind of salty language, so I ended up deciding to take down the VOD of the original tournament stream, and we're going to be re-streaming here. I have the video saved on my computer, and I'm going to be going through the video and providing commentary instead of the player audio, so you can still see the games. We won't have any issues with salty language, and there's going to be hopefully some more interesting commentary on the overall matchups and situations, rather than me just sitting around and asking my opponent how many cards they have in their hand or how much energy they're floating or whatever. So hopefully that's going to be a more exciting experience here for the viewers, and we are going to we're going to get right into it. So this is this footage, like I said, was taken from the official stream that I did this weekend, but I downloaded it here. This is not the right footage. This is just what I had loaded for a previous stream. We're going to switch over. So this event, the footage that I have there was from myself playing Katsu, and that was in an event that was played on Tabletop Simulator. But this new event was it was a webcam tournament, and it was actually one of the first major tournaments. To occur with the Monarch cards allowed. So this was now one thing I'll say about this tournament was that with the Monarch stuff allowed, not everyone had all the cards that they would most want. We're gonna skip ahead. So I'm gonna do this stream is just gonna be the top 8 here. And we do have so actually we're gonna backtrack. So that was the final against Bravo. Sneak preview. This was top 4 against Chain, and then I believe against Ira. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go to top 8 and get started from there. I do have there were 6 rounds of Swiss into the top 8, and I do plan on recording. I do plan on doing a stream that covers those 6 rounds of Swiss later on, also with the more commentary. But for now, I thought I would do the top 8 because that was, maybe the more exciting component of the event. So, yeah, basically, for those who aren't familiar, I was using Tall Dorinthia, a very similar deck to what I was playing during the skirmish season. But I actually made a few changes to it, just tinkering around. The most relevant change was that I went to 2 copies of Command and Conquer. The reason that I was running Command and Conquer is pretty simple. I had not encountered a situation where Command and Conquer was going to be really bad So in other words, Command and Conquer was already a card that was kind of coming in and out of the deck. I wasn't running it in my most recent build in the skirmish season. I was running a single copy of Route and no CNCs. Because Command and Conquer was already a pretty good card, when the time came for Monarch to come out, I started thinking about Prism and how to defend against her. And I ended up deciding that in order to improve my matchup against Prism, I was going to go back to having 2 copies of Command and Conquer. So I actually cut my copy of Route, and I think the other card I cut was a yellow copy of Warrior's Valor. And I am gonna post when I post this on YouTube. I'll put a link to my deck list in the when I post this on YouTube. I'll put a link to my deck list in the video description, so that'll go up tomorrow. But it isn't really anything that special. It's basically a variation on the Tall Dorinthia build that I used during the skirmish season and at several of the Discord Gauntlet events. So I it's the same sort of thing, and I've just been tinkering with the specific cards. In this case, adding 2 Command and Conquers as a cannon or Prism. However, I didn't end up playing against Prism, but Command and Conquer is a good card anyway, and we will see how things go. Okay, so on the left here we have myself, and on the right we have Marius, who is playing Ira. And so this is a classic matchup. This is really kind of going back. In some ways this matchup is a throwback to that skirmish season that I was discussing earlier, because Dorinthia versus Ira was, at least in the US and EU skirmishes, Dorinthia versus Ira was kind of the name of the game in some of these events in terms of what you would most expect to see, like some of the most common matchups, some of the most common heroes. And I do think that Dorinthia ended up a little favored than that. So before the drone ban, I felt like I was quite advantaged against Ira, but a strong player playing a control defensive Ira would be able to beat me. However, with the drone ban, I ended up seeing a lot of the Ira players move to more aggressive builds, which had more cards like Life for a Life or Leg Tap, which do not defend for 3, and can make Ira more vulnerable to Dorinthia's aggression. So I think those changes kind of worsened the matchup against Dorinthia, and made me more confident in my ability to beat Ira. So the drone ban, I know at first people were saying it wasn't going to be a big deal, but I think it was more impactful than they realized. Okay, so on my first turn, all I do is Arsenal, and my opponent goes for a leg tap into a Command and Conquer here. So this is a pretty strong opening here from Ira with the leg tap 4 into Command and Conquer 7. I just ate the 4 damage from the leg tap because I don't really consider that something that's going to be. I don't really consider that to be something that's a very big deal. I'm often quite willing to trade. I'm often quite willing to trade life for tempo in this game. And you may notice me kind of trying to look at my cards while keeping them visible on camera. This is kind of one of those webcam things. See there, I do kind of a bad job, so you can sort of see my cards, but my hands are like kind of on the boundary there. That's one of the downsides of webcam. It's sometimes hard to do that. There's actually a recent recommendation from I think it's Red Riot Games, was talking about how they think people should standardize on a perspective that is kind of angled. So instead of being a top-down view, it's angled towards the player so that you can see their kind of upper chest and their arms, and that's like what they're doing with the cards. I do think that's a good idea in terms of like tournament integrity, but I think there is an issue with it, which is that it makes the cards less legible, especially if there's glare from the sleeves. Depending on the lighting conditions, that can maybe be a big deal or maybe not. But yeah, so I end up in this situation going with I go with a double block plus the refraction bolters to counter that CNC. But that's more than I was hoping for. And I was thinking about maybe doing a large equipment block, like blocking 4 with equipment and then coming in with one card so that I could have another card remaining on this turn. But what I end up deciding is on this turn I can pitch and do so I can pitch here and do Steelblade Supremacy Swing. And this is potentially threatening the refraction bolters into go again. My opponent blocks with his mask and then also throws out a flick flack. So he's gonna get the full block, but I'm happy to see him lose the mask this early because, mask, it is something that you can counter often with all the armor that Dorinthia has, but the fact that he has used it means that I don't have to, essentially, and it's kind of gonna give me a potential opportunity here. So I end up deciding to just arsenal my remaining card and end the turn there. So I only got one card, but I did also get the mask. The other thing there is if I had the ability to push through and I took it, it would potentially lead to my opponent just being able to counter the second attack relatively easily with his Flick Flack. So he does Kadachi 1, Kadachi 2. So in a situation where someone, so I end up blocking with the Skull Cap, and that's a move. That's like a pretty standard move against an opponent who still has a mask, but I do it there as I'm just trying to mitigate the damage. He's then coming in. I think that's a Fluster Fist Blue, so it's just coming in for 2 damage. Not an attack that I'm incredibly worried about, but or is Fluster Fist 2? I think Fluster Fist is 2. It's either 2 or 1, and I think so I don't care, and I just take 2. And yep, it was 2. So that is my turn. Once again, my hand is kind of on the edge of the camera visibility zone, which is unfortunate. I'm going to go for a Warrior's Valor, pitching yellow and swinging. I believe it is a red Warrior's Valor, so that would be coming in for 6 with Go Again, but I'm not entirely sure. I think I have only the reds and blues in the deck right now. In one of these games, I did end up playing a blue Warrior's Valor, but I don't remember if it was this one. Warrior's Valor is a nice card to do some threat. My opponent counters with a Flick Flack. I think it's actually a blue Flick Flack here. And yeah, so it was a red Warrior's Valor, so my opponent takes 4. I'm indicating there that I get the Go Again from Warrior's Valor, and I get the ability to swing again with Dorinthia. So now I'm going to pitch a CNC and swing, coming in for 3. I have 1 card in hand, 1 card in arsenal. No energy floating. If I recall correctly, this hand did not have a lot of energy available, which is why we see moves like this. However, I'm still threatening either an Iron Song response or a pitch into some type of attack reaction. So either way, the opponent has to consider whether I'm going to pull off some trick and be able to get my +1 counter on the Dawnblade here, which is always something that +1 counter on the Dawnblade is something that I'm often trying to do and something my opponent often wants to stop. Interestingly, he just lets me hit him here. Now this is kind of scary because it might mean that he has a really good turn. But I get my +1 counter, and I'm actually feeling pretty good about this situation because I have a lot of armor. My opponent goes for a big pitch and Kadachi for 1. I'm going to let that in. So that deals 1 damage, and it also enables my Arcanite Skullcap, which means now I'm going to have maybe that extra point of armor this turn. Kind of an odd little thing to think about, but every little bit of that can actually matter. So I end up going for I do a block there with the Courage. I think at this point my reasoning was that I was worried about a potential push the point coming out here. It comes in with a, I believe it is a red Torrent of Tempo coming in for 5 if it hits Go Again. So at this point I could block it. I could do a 1 card block plus a, bracers, so that would be 3 + 2. That would block 5. Now my opponent could give it Go Again anyway by using his Snapdragon Scalers, but that is going to be something that's potentially very negative for me. So I'm thinking about it, and I do end up going with the 1 card block plus the 1 card block plus the bracers. So that's going to be a block for 5. And my opponent opts not to use his Scalers, which does mean that the turn is going to end there. And I actually feel pretty good about that. So he let me get that Dawnblade counter. And in exchange, he was not really able to do that much damage, though he does then play out a Sigil of Solace red and heal up. So that's going to be a little negative for me. So then I'm going to go for a pitching a blue Warrior's Valor, and swinging in with Spoils of War into a Dawn Blade. So coming in for a total of 6 damage with unconditional go again. And if this hits, I will get 2 copper tokens. I have 1 energy floating, 1 card in hand, 1 card in arsenal. And I do still have a fair amount of equipment left, as I am lower life than my opponent. I still do have a block from Skullcap, and as well as 2 more points of armor from the bracers and courage if I choose to use it. My opponent, however, lets this attack in. So then I'm going to use the bracers and swing. Now, interestingly, the card that I had here was an energy potion. So I think, if I recall correctly, I was thinking here that if my opponent manages to completely stop me, I can just play the energy potion and use my go again that way, and therefore be setting up for the future. But luckily, in my view at least, he ended up not blocking that first one. Now I'm able to buff up the second one with the bracers and come in for 5. So 5 damage is coming in here, and if this hits, it's going to be not only another +1 counter, but also 2 more copper against my opponent. And now he does threaten a big spike of damage here. So if we're looking at his situation, he has a full hand, he has a card in arsenal, he has a Fyendal's Spring Tunic with all 3 counters charged up on it, and he does also still have both his Breaking Scales and his Snapdragon Scalers. So he has really actually a lot of threat available at this time. And so even though I have a pretty good situation on my own offense right here, it isn't the case that I'm like, oh, this is over, I'm in a dominating position. Like, yes, being a warrior and getting counters on your Dawnblade is good, but at the same time, Ira can really throw out a lot of damage. And that's one of the strengths of these more aggressive Ira decks that we've been seeing more recently. While they don't have the same ability to just ward you off that the more control Ira builds did, the more aggressive Iras do potentially threaten a lot of burst damage at the right time, especially when they still have those scalers. So it is something that I still need to be concerned about. Now, my opponent is evaluating the situation himself, trying to figure out how exactly he should block this attack. So it ends up being a single card plus a Flick Flack, which I do believe is going to block me completely here. So he could have gotten more efficient total block numbers if he used the Flick Flack on the first attack, but it's possible he was trying to save it. In any case, that's going to be it for the turn, so I don't get my second counter, but I do keep the counter because I landed the first hit. So I'm actually fine with that outcome. When I'm playing as Dorinthia, I often am in a spot where I think it's fine to have the second attack not hit if I already have a counter or 2, and as long as one of them hits, then I keep my counter. I might even save attack reactions to try to keep that single counter ready, rather than trying to push through to build up more counters, because even just having one can be a big boon. Okay, so my opponent comes in for 1. That's not going to be a block. Then he's going to come in for 2. That one is going to score a hit for 2. Now I'm below life, so I can use my Skullcap block if needed, and then he comes in with the old Arcanite, or I'm sorry, not Arcanite. Arcanite Skullcap is what I'm thinking of, but my opponent here is coming in with the old Enlightened Strike. I believe it is an E-Strike 7, so he doesn't have any cards anymore, but it is a situation where I'm going to have to think about how to respond to this E-Strike. As I am at 9 life, so he's coming in for 7. So one thing that I might do here is I might block with my Arcanite Skullcap. Given that my opponent has already had his Tunic disabled, I'm not very worried about the Tunic. And I'm 1 point below him, so this is a good opportunity to use the Skullcap. Yeah, so I end up going with a Skullcap and a hit and run there to block 4 out of the 7 damage, so I'm going to end up taking 3. It's going to bring me down to 6 life, but it's going to keep me... one of the considerations that I've been thinking about there also is keeping out of range of Razor Reflex. So these more aggressive decks often run Razor Reflex, and so by doing it this way, I'm kind of thinking to myself, maybe I'm going to be able to keep out of that state where I have to worry that a Razor is going to kill me, and therefore I won't have to block against like Karachi swings or whatever. And so being at 6 life, if he comes in with a Karachi for 1 and he buffs it by 3, goes up to 5, doesn't kill me. Anyway, Now I'm trying to push some big stuff through. So I go with the Iron Song Determination on the Dawnblade, and it's going to be a swing for 5. And now the card that I blocked with last turn was so my opponent goes for a block 5. The card that I blocked with last turn was a copy of Hit and Run, which I could have played here to get me the go again. However, my opponent's exact 5 block actually puts me in a pretty good situation here because I'm able to use the Singing Steelblade, fetch a Glint, shuffling up. And Glint's going to get me that go again. The Singing Steelblade is going to get me +1. And so that's going to allow me to hopefully sneak in there, get the hit, and then get my second attack, threatening more damage. Yep, so that's that is kind of the scenario. Now, I think my opponent is, I think it's somewhat common to be in a situation in Blitz, at least, where you use Tunic like once and then block with it, because the Blitz games tend to be faster. That the value that you get from that Tunic building up is way higher in Classic Constructed games that are going to go much longer than it is in Blitz, where often you're only going to get one use, sometimes not even one. You know, I've definitely had games against Kano in particular where their copy of a Fyendal Spring Tunic doesn't even get a chance to charge up. So I think what I was considering here is whether or not to play an attack reaction that I had in hand. I decided not to do it, but I actually think this was an error. So I believe, if I recall correctly, I could have played a red Iron Song response for another 3 damage. I think that I should have done this. I didn't end up doing it because I wanted to save it for the second attack in case he had something that was going to be able to stop it. Try to use that reaction to push through and get me the second +1 counter. But given that I have 2 cards in hand, I think it actually would have been more correct to simply play the red Iron Song response now and then arsenal the other card. The second attack comes in and my opponent lets it hit him. He goes to 4 life, and I do get the second +1 counter, but he's going to have a fair amount of stuff to swing back at me with here. And I do think that I should have played that Iron Song response, because then it would take him down to 1 life or make him block with one of his cards from hand against the second attack, which would then degrade his ability to threaten me. So he comes in with the Kadachi for 1. It's going to be a no block from me. Followed up by I believe that is a Hurricane Technique. Ira's +1 gets a lot of value in the course of a game. Just doing +1 damage repeatedly on attacks, that's a pretty good way to get some things done in this game. Just an ability that you can use basically every turn. That's nice and efficient. By the way, while we're waiting for me to make a decision here, I'm gonna do a little bit of the old crinkle. I got a Monarch box here that I picked up from a local store that I had pre-ordered it from, and I am gonna be opening a Monarch box while I do this stream. So I'm not gonna be actually doing a box opening video-wise, but if you hear the old pat crinkling noise, that's what I'm doing. So he then, so this is coming in, I block for 3, and he's going to buff it with a Razor Reflex and with his Breaking Scales. So that's going to be an extra 4 damage, and out comes the Steelblade Shunt from hand. Normally you don't want to play this on things that aren't weapons, but I think that in this situation it saves me from dying, as that extra 4 block is going to leave me alive on 3 life instead of dead on -1 life. So I was able to counter that. And now it's going to be my chance to do some damage. Okay. We're going to go ahead on this turn with the simple break Courage Bladehold and Dawnblade for 5. Dawnblade for 5, pretty good. Those counters mean a lot. Opponent's got to think about what he wants to do in this situation. Oh, that's cool. I just pulled a foil Lumina Ascension. Though sadly not an extended art foil. Still, foil Majestic and have quite a strong card. I personally think Lumina Ascension is probably the strongest of Bolton's little tricks there. I like it probably more than V. Anyway, my opponent is, in the meantime, considering these options. Complex Artichoke says, congrats. Thank you. Much appreciated. So then, yeah, my opponent ends up going with a, I think it is a red Sink, which he does trigger. I'm thinking about whether I want to add some stuff. I go for a Glint there after the Sink resolves. And I'm going to throw the that red Iron Song. So I was discussing that red Iron Song earlier, and I am going to throw it in there to just do some bonus damage. My opponent throws out another defense reaction here. I think this one is a red Flick Flack. Or actually, I'm sorry. This red Iron Song I think was actually a top deck from the Glint. And sadly, that means that I am going to get stymied there. My opponent has 2 cards in hand. I'm at 3 life. He's at 4 life. He doesn't have a lot, but I am kind of in the danger zone here, so we're going to see what happens. He ends up playing one of his cards, which is a simple Sigil of Solace, healing up by 3, and then card into the arsenal. I end up pitching, and that's I believe a blue Iron Song response. Pitch and swing for 3. Opponent goes for a double block, blocking 6 with a Flying Kick and Torrent of Tempo, I think there. Thinking about what to do. I'm actually a little worried at this point. I end up pitching to play a red Overpower here, going up by 6, so I would currently be hitting him for 3. My opponent counters with a, I believe, blue Flick Flack. So he's now blocking 8 to my attack strength of 9. I think okay, and so I let that hit him. I let that hit him for 1, and then I'm going to pitch the Stroke of Foresight that I have in hand to get 1 energy and swing again for 3, finally using those Refraction Bolters. I'm trying to just put some more pressure on here. You know, if I can get him to block here, he doesn't get a turn next turn. And if he goes ahead and hits me, that's going to put me into the zone where I will have... If he lets me hit him, then I'm going to get a +1 counter. And if he blocks, he won't get a turn. So I'm pretty happy with that situation. He ends up letting me hit him. There's the +1. Dawnblade back with a +1 counter on it. Complex Artichoke says, Lumina is stronger, but I love the flavor of V. Yeah, so I think, yeah, Via the Vanguard is a very cool, very thematic card. Lumina Ascension, though, in terms of power level, that would be my preference. Okay, so we see a Karachi swing from him. Karachi for 1 with Go again. At this point, I'm a little worried. I'm worried in particular that that card in his arsenal is going to be another copy of Razor Reflex. A lot of these decks are playing 2. So I do end up blocking with a card from my hand. I think it's a unmovable that I wasn't likely to be able to play anyway. He comes in with a second Karachi, and I block that one with a Twinning Blade. So, you know, those are you know, it's expensive to be blocking a Karachi when you don't absolutely have to be blocking a Karachi with a card from hand, but under the circumstances, I want to do it because I am worried about that Razor. And I know that on my turn, I'm going to be able to have a pretty good turn even without that, because I have Iron Song Determination coming in for Dominate. So that is going to be a 5 Dominate swing. My opponent throws out, he doesn't block and then throws out a red Flick Flack, so blocking for 4. And then I throw out a red, I think it is a red Out for Blood for an additional 3. So I'm up to 8 to his 3. That is game. He goes ahead and shows his hand. He actually had a pretty strong situation for next turn potentially. And he shows the Arsenal card, which was indeed the Razor Reflex. So I'm happy that I played conservative in fear of that Razor last turn. If I had not blocked those Karachi with cards, that would have actually been the game. So that's a that's kind of something to watch out for when you're playing against these Ira decks. When I was playing against Dante, who was kind of my, I would say he was to some degree my nemesis or whatever during the skirmish season, we played against each other many times with him playing Ira and me playing Dorinthia. But the one of the core things in that was that when he was playing the more control-oriented deck pre-drone ban, I knew that he wasn't playing Razor Reflex, so I didn't have to worry about it. But in this matchup, Razor Reflex was a big deal and definitely something that I was concerned about. So I was happy here to be able to identify that and counterplay it. First with not blocking that much against his, I forget what it was. I think it was a Hurricane technique. So in that first one, I didn't block that much against his Hurricane technique, which then allowed me to counter the Razor Reflex with a copy of Steel Blade Shunt to avoid death. And then the second one, I just countered by overblocking those Kadachi and managed to prevent that from killing me. So yeah, you got to watch out for those Razor Reflexes. They're really strong. Ira can play them on most of her attacks, though she can't play them on a... So Ira is not able to play Razor Reflex on a... What's it called? She can't play it on a Command and Conquer or a Flying Kick, anything that costs 2. But she can play it both on her weapon attacks and also on her... she can play it both on weapon attacks and also on her many of her attack action cards. So if you're getting low on life, you have to start worrying. So, you know, that old saying, which I quite like, is only the last point of life matters. And I think that in terms of only the last point of life matters, that's a little less true in the situation where we have to worry about Razor Reflex or something like that, because there are kind of these crucial breakpoints. So for me, I was discussing earlier how I was blocking maybe a little more than I would normally to avoid being at the breakpoint where a Razor would threaten to kill me from Kadachi. So like 4 life is actually a critical like danger zone moment against a harmonized Kadachi. If you think your opponent might have a Razor Reflex waiting. So in the chat here, we got a message from I think it says Parsifal, though it's got some elite speak in there, and Yeah, Parsifal asks, what do you think about Nourishing Emptiness? Yeah, so Nourishing Emptiness is a very interesting card. I think that it is... So if you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, you're only playing one attack in your entire deck, I think making it Nourishing Emptiness is a great move. So in particular, some of my old versions of the Dorinthia deck would play one and only one copy of Command and Conquer. And I felt that that was a very strong move in that one copy of Command and Conquer... switching that to a Nourishing Emptiness would put you in a situation where it was guaranteed to get the bonus. So the thing about Nourishing Emptiness is that if you do have the bonus, it's amazing, and if you don't have the bonus, it's actually not terrible. So it's equivalent. There is a generic which is 2 cost, swing for 6, block for 3. So the worst case scenario is that you're the same as the vanilla card, which isn't that bad. And I think there's at least some reason to consider running it if you're in a situation where you might have there is at least some reason to consider running it if you're in a situation where you might have a need for more strength 6 stuff in order to block against Prism and turn off some of her illusions. But the thing that I'll say about it is that I think that if you want to actually use the ability reliably, that's going to be a little more difficult. So your best option for using it reliably might be to play it in Levia and hope to banish all the attacks from your zone, and then play it. But then in that case, you're likely taking some blood debt, so that kind of has a cost of its own. And then alternatively, the best use is to be in one of those decks that only has one attack, like my old Warrior deck with the 1x CNC. I would probably switch that for a 1x Nourishing Emptiness. But right now I decided that I wanted to have 2 attacks instead of 1 to better increase my chances against Prism. So I went with the CNCs because they're guaranteed to have their ability be live. That being said, there's some situations where like your opponent doesn't have a card in Arsenal and CNC is not that good. It's at least conceivable to me that playing the 2x playing the 2x copies of CNC, you could maybe do better with 2x Nourishing Emptiness, and then the first one that you play is really good, and then the second one is not, but at least the first one is, unless you blocked with the one first or something. But I don't know for sure. That sounds like something that's going to need some testing. I think I've actually pulled like 4 Nourishing Emptiness, so it is something that I could do, but I haven't tested it yet. Okay, so we're gonna skip ahead a bit to game 2. All right, so game 2, or I'm sorry, top 4. So this is going to be against Chain, and so Chain's an interesting opponent. So Chain has the ability to give himself this Soul Shackle thing, which is going to allow him to go again with a bunch of his stuff. But it does also mean that he banishes a card at the start of his turn. But that banishing is kind of a secret advantage because it's going to fuel his various blood debt cards that hurt you if they're in the banish zone, but can also be played from the banish zone. And this opponent is also running the card, what's it called? It's called Husk. And the Husk is a really, really strong armor. It is a chest armor card. And it's actually among the strongest. It's among the strongest pieces of equipment in the game, I feel, especially in the Blitz format. So the way that the Husk works is that it blocks for 6, and then it's a piece of armor that blocks for 6, which is kind of crazy. But then after it blocks, it does go into the banish zone, and then you take and it has blood debt, so you'll take 1 life point at the end of each of your turns after blocking with it. And then it actually also has one other disadvantage, which is in addition to going to the banish zone, if you block with it, it also banishes itself and self-destructs if you start a turn with 13 or less life. So my opponent, I believe all he does here. Yeah, so this first situation was kind of odd. So all my opponent did was banish make a rune chant token on the first turn, and I was hoping that he would attack me so I could block and mulligan, or I was like, that would have been good. I don't know if I was thinking it at the time. And I end up doing this attack and playing 2 small reactions to buff it. Like, I attack for 3, he blocks for 3. Or no, I attack for 3. Yeah, I think he blocks for 3, but only with equipment, and then I play 2+1 attack reactions. Though we actually did misplay this, and I did 1 damage with an Iron Song Response Blue that shouldn't have done anything. And I apologized to my opponent after the game. I don't know that it would have affected the outcome, but I apologized to him, and he said, that's okay. Sorry, this one gets a little disrupted because someone joins in and has like their camera going, and is just spectating. So, we asked for that person to stop, but I think they pop on for a moment or two later on as well. So my opponent plays Dimensional Gateway, which allows him to do some annoying stuff. And at this point or something close to it, I actually realized that I made a very key mistake in this game, which is that I actually forgot to equip. I actually forgot to equip a Null Rune item. And so normally against Chain, what you want to be doing is playing a Null Rune Hood here instead of the Arcanite Skullcap. And I just realized that I forgot to do that. So that's a bit of a sad moment there for me. And meanwhile, my opponent is doing some pretty scary stuff. So he zaps me for 1, then he comes in with a Meet and Greet, which is going to be for 4 with Go Again because he did the 1 arcane damage because I didn't have an item that would block it. I do block the Meet and Greet with 2 pieces of equipment. He's then going to use, I believe it's Soul Reaping. I don't actually remember what the name of this card is, but it's Chain's rare specialization. Really, really strong. And so this is now coming in. And so this is coming in for 6, and I believe he used Chain's ability also to give it Go Again, and then he's going to be able to play something from his Banish Zone. Carrion Husk is the full name. Raven says, I've been testing with Exude Confidence in a very blue Ranger build, which is fun but not great. Yeah, I don't think Ranger wants to run a lot of blue. Complex Artichoke says, I like to call it by its true name, Time Walk, in reference to the Carrion Husk. Yeah. So, yeah, Husk is high impact. My opponent just unleashing a huge barrage of attacks here. So I end up blocking that last Galaxy Black swing with a Command and Conquer because he doesn't have a card in Arsenal, and by blocking it, I'm actually preventing 4 damage because if it hits, it will do an extra 1. By the way, I just pulled a Cold Foil Blood Drop Brocade. I have to say the Cold Foil finish on some of these cards, looking very good. They really have some nice, subtle, and interesting foils here in this game. But meanwhile, in the game that I'm actually playing in this event, having realized that I don't have the Arcane Barrier, I decided that I need to try to play aggressively because his arcane effects are likely going to chip me down if I don't put the pressure on. So I come in here with a copy of Steelblade Supremacy, buffing the Dawnblade, swing for 5, and if it hits, it will be a +1, or I'm sorry, it will be a card draw, and I could potentially use the Scalers to give it Go Again. Now this is actually an interesting situation. My opponent's at, oh man, what's happening here? Oh, it's that guy again. So my opponent's thinking about what to do. And he's thinking. And this is an interesting situation because the Husk is very relevant here. So he could block me with the Husk, which would block for 6. And potentially add more stuff to prevent me from going over the top. He is also to some degree at risk of losing the Husk to its kind of self-destruct effect if I can end up getting him to 13 life. If I can end up getting him to 13 life or less at the start of his turn. He is currently at 17 life because he damaged himself for 1 with a Blood Debt. And I am coming in for 5. He's thinking about his options. So you have to be a little careful. So even though the Husk is really strong with the 6... damage, with the 6 damage block, you have to be a little worried about situations where your opponent can potentially trick you and get it to self-destruct, in which case you've actually dealt yourself a bunch of damage and not blocked anything. So in this situation, my opponent starts reaching for his Husk and his Skullcap. He's thinking, or maybe he rethinks that his Skullcap doesn't block right now, but he's really thinking about making a big block against this because I do have that threatening on hit effect. Yeah, so he starts laying out the cards. He's thinking about Husk. He's thinking about doing the Husk plus the Grasp of the Arknight, blocking 7, and maybe even throwing something else in there to block more. Thinking about the cards in his hand, and so this would be a big, like, just try to shut me down. He rethinks it, and he pulls back those cards. He's weighing his options, and he ends up deciding that he's just going to take the damage. And I say to myself, great, nothing else. That's my turn. And so the reason that I did this is normally you would want to break your refraction bolters and come in for another swing, but I know if I do that, he can stop it with the Husk. And this way, because he just went to 12 life by taking this, his Husk actually self-destructs at the start of his turn. And so I remind him of that, and he loses the Husk. And this is now that's a really big swing in this game for me tempo wise, because now he's not going to be able to try to reset me with the Husk, and instead he's going to be now taking damage himself. So I feel like I made a big blunder by not equipping the Nullrune Hood, but then in this situation my opponent made a fairly substantial blunder by getting his Husk, by having his Husk self-destruct. And even though I don't get to put the huge pressure on with the Steelblade Supremacy and multiple attacks and stuff, I think that it's pretty worth it to have him not get his Husk and start taking that damage from it being banished. So now my opponent is doing some stuff here. Banishes some cards with Chain. And so he's thinking about his situation. He did an Art of War there. Art of War is really good with Chain, because since Chain has cards that can be played from the banish zone, one of the effects that you can choose from Art of War banishes one card, and then it's going to allow you to draw 2 more. And that can actually be just card advantage with Chain, because you can banish. It has to be an attack action card, but you can banish it an attack that can be played from the zone, and then it's basically still relevant. So you end up being much more threatening than you would be under other circumstances. Opponent coming in here with a, I don't know what the first card he played was, but then it's a Ghostly Visit for 4. It's kind of funny because when Ghostly Visit was previewed, I thought it was horrible, but I actually now think that it's a very strong card for this deck. In chat, Complex Artichoke earlier commented, surprised they chose Galaxy Black. Nebula Blade feels much stronger. I agree with you. I think that I would want to, when I'm playing Chain, I have done a fair amount of testing with Chain, and actually my favorite card for him is the Nebula Blade. In terms of weapons, and I think my second pick would actually be the Reaping Blade over Galaxy Black, but that's just my opinion. So he has had Go Again. I still can't quite make out what that first card is. It might be like a Mavrian Skies or a Shadow Puppetry or something else that gives Go Again, or maybe he just used Chain's ability. All right, so then he's gonna come in with a Command and Conquer. Pretty threatening turn, all things considered. Chain really does have the ability to throw together a lot of aggression with all the Go Again stuff he can do. Raven says, I think it's a blue Ghostly. Okay, so it's actually, yeah, so he did... Oh, you know what? I think he did Go Again from the Art of War. So it was Go Again with the Art of War Ghostly Visit, then Go Again with Chain Ghostly Visit, then the dimensional thing into CNC. I end up going for a double block, which is, painful, but I gotta stop that. And then he's gonna take some damage there from his Blood Debt, and I'm gonna throw out another Steelblade Supremacy into Dawnblade Swing. I have one floating, one card in Arsenal, and I do still have the old Refraction Bolters there to threaten some major damage. opponent's thinking about this. So Steelblade Supremacy is one of Dorinthia's biggest standout cards in my view. Really allows you to throw out some threatening. Really allows you to throw out some threatening stuff. I have now also pulled a Spill Blood, which is actually the card that I previewed on stream earlier. My opponent has me show him the discard pile stuff. I'm not entirely sure why. I think he's maybe just trying to figure out what attack reactions I have available. But Spill Blood, not actually a card that fits that well with my playstyle since I like the sword more than the axes, but could be cool for an axe build, especially maybe an axe Bolton, and I think it's quite strong and limited actually. Meanwhile, opponent figuring out how to contend here. This can be a tough decision when you got the when you have the Supremacy coming in. He goes for a huge block. He blocks with 3 cards. He blocks for 3 cards plus his grasp. So blocks that one out. Then he mills some stuff. The life totals are currently 8 to 10. So he throws out, this is, what's it called? Or, yeah, so he tries to play an Unhallowed Rites, but I actually point out that he can't do it because you have to play the non-attack action first. So instead he plays the non-attack action, which I believe is a Seeds of Agony, and then he plays a Bounding Demagon after that instead. That does mean that he's going to be stuck with that. It does mean he's going to be stuck with that Unhallowed Rites in the zone, though, and he's going to end up taking damage, I believe. In addition to the damage that he's already taken from the self-destructed Carrion Husk. All right, last pack here. This hasn't been a huge winner of a box so far. You know, I've gotten a few M's, not that many M's. I did get a few foil M's, so that's cool. I think I got 2 or 3 of them, and I did also score that cold foil Blood Drop Brocade, so that's tight. Yeah, nothing too fancy in this last pack either. So, relative to the market price for selling this box, this is probably a loser, but relative to the price that I paid for it, it is a winner. And this was one that I believe I previewed it. I pre-ordered at MSRP, so that was pretty sweet. Just a local store pre-order. By the way, pro tip: if you want to pre-order products, going to your local store is a good way to do that because, and it depends on your area. But I was able to get a fair few boxes from just local stores around me. How many boxes have I opened? I actually don't know. I think I would be in the. I think I'm in the 4 to 7 range, maybe. I don't know exactly. I have actually had some. I've had some pretty good luck though because I've pulled both a Vestige of Soul and a Carrion Husk in cold foil, as well as some other cold foil cards. Yeah, just some cold foil. I think I have some cold foil Ironhide equipment, and now this cold foil Blood Drop Brocade that I pulled as well. So. That's been some pretty good luck. Haven't hit the library, and I don't believe that I've hit any of the extended art foils, which are said to be very rare. But the getting the Carrion Husk earlier today was pretty sweet. So in this situation, my opponent's at 8 life, and I'm at 7 life. I'm coming in here with the Spoils of War Dawnblade, so coming in for a total of 5 with Go Again. If it hits, it will get me 2 copper tokens. No energy floating, but I do still have 2 cards in hand, and I have not used actually either my Courage of Bladehold or my Refraction Bolters yet, which is a pretty good situation in terms of threatening your opponent as you move later in the game. My opponent, on the other hand, has used his boots, which I think were the snaps. So I'm coming in for 5. My opponent goes for a triple block, so that's going to be blocking 8, and then I throw out the old CNC for 6. So this is extremely dangerous for my opponent because the CNC for 6. So right now he's above me in life, so he can't use his skull cap. If he lets this hit him for 6, he goes to 2 life. At 2 life, he then doesn't have a he then has only 1 card and has a good chance of dying to his own blood debt because he would take 2 damage right now, and he would not be able to play the he would not actually be able to play the Unhallowed Rites that he has in the Banished Zone because you have to play a non-attack action first. So even if his last card is a non-attack action, he couldn't both play the non-attack action and have energy for the Unhallowed Rites. There is a chance that he could mill a Seeds of Agony, play that, pitch the card that he had in hand to play the Unhallowed Rites, but it's not guaranteed. So he ends up deciding that he is going to have to block here, blocks with his remaining card, and so it only blocks for 2, so he gets hit for 4. And goes down to 4 life, and now he doesn't get a turn. He's going to take at least 2 damage, and we see if he mills enough to kill himself from the blood, or not to kill himself, but to be killed by the blood debt. He does get a Seeds, and I think that's the only extra blood debt card that he mills. So he's going to play the Seeds to avoid taking damage, but he doesn't have the energy to actually play that. Oh, and I guess he had maybe a Ghostly Visit in there too, so he takes 3 and goes down to 1 life. So now he's dead at the end of his next turn for sure because the Husk will kill him. And so he's in some big trouble there. And so I'm going to come in here with a Sharpened Steel into Dawnblade for 3. So it's a total of 6. He dies at the end of his next turn, so he has to kill me on his next turn, or he dies to the blood debt from his Carrion Husk. He goes for a block 8 or something. Yeah, so he goes for I think he goes for a block 8, and then I play the stroke, and then he says, "Oh no, I actually wanted to block 9." I let him have it here because I think he's doomed anyway, quite frankly. And I was maybe playing that a little too fast. But in any case, the Stroke of Foresight deck filtering gives me another attack reaction, which I used to take him out. Even if he had lived there, he only would have had 1 card, and would have had to have that 1 card plus whatever he milled to outright kill me, or else he loses to blood debt. So pretty favorable situation. For me at the end of that game. Oh, 1 moment here. Got a little bit of power issues. Okay, sorry about that. My computer came unplugged, but that's going to be a win in that game. So that was an interesting game. I actually made a very major error in that game, as I discussed earlier, by not equipping the Nullrune Hood. But it ended up my opponent allowing his Carrion Husk to self-destruct was it was a major blunder on his part, and as a result of that, I was able to maintain more pressure than I would have been able to otherwise, and ultimately got the win. Raven asks, how have your matches against Chain been for the most part? It's very interesting. I'll tell you that much. Chain is going to be here. We're gonna skip this. We're gonna skip this part of the stream because I'm just on the loading screen there. So Chain is a strong hero. I actually think Chain can give Dorinthia a run for her money. The Carrion Husk is a core part of that. So the Carrion Husk is really, really strong at resetting Dorinthia's tempo. The downside to it, though, is there is the risk that Dorinthia is going to trick you and destroy and get the Husk to self-destruct. So a good example of that is, let's say Dorinthia just throws out Dawnblade for 3, nothing else. If you don't block that, and she pitches, if you don't block that and she pitches and throws out a red overpower for a +4, that could just be you're dead, right there. So that's, or not you're dead, but it goes up to 7, hits you, you go down to 13 life. 13 life means that you are now in the self-destruct range, and you lose your Carrion Husk. So that is absolutely something that can happen to you. On the other hand, it can also happen that Dorinthia comes in and you just block with the Husk, block 6. Don't need to use the stuff from your hand. Stop her momentum there for a turn, and then that really gives you a huge tempo swing. So earlier in the chat, someone called it a time walk. Yeah, Complex Artichoke said he liked to call Carrion Husk by its true name, Time Walk. And I do actually think that it can have a similar thing where it's just like blocking 6 with equipment only can just be like, I'm resetting you. That's it for your turn. And if you do it that way, like if someone does, I don't know, like let's say someone goes pitch Warriors Valor Red, swing for 6 if it hits go again. That's normally pretty scary. Let's say, maybe they have another card or 2 available. But if you just say, okay, block for Husk, reprise stuff isn't on. Maybe they play, maybe they can play a +3 attack reaction and hit you for 3, but then maybe they won't have energy for a second swing. It's just really big. Raven says, it feels like decks have to be hyper aggressive to force the Husk early, because if Chain gets 3 shackles before they have to use Husk, they're probably in a very commanding position. That may be. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but in general, I feel that the Husk is a very important component of what Chain's doing and is really threatening. Really threatening for decks like Dorinthia in particular that are kind of reliant on hit effects. The Husk can be key. On the other hand, if the Husk does end up getting self-destructed, it can be a very negative situation for you as the Chain player. I need to do more testing with it, but I currently feel that a aggressive Chain deck in Blitz playing the Husk is at least a competitive matchup for Dorinthia. I wouldn't say, Chain is dominant, Chain always wins, but I would say it's at least a competitive matchup for Dorinthia. And I actually think there's a chance that a aggressive Chain deck is going to be one of the successes of Monarch, at least in my opinion. And it's kind of funny because I quite dislike Chain's actual art and like character concept. I think his character design is pretty bland. I think that he's like kind of generic evil cult guy, and he I also I was talking about this earlier somewhere else, but I actually don't like one of the things that I don't like as much about Flesh and Blood is the kind of 16 plus aspect of the game, where they're aiming for a older audience than you would see with some of the other games of this type, and as a result there's a little more gore and stuff than there would be in some other things. I think that I think some of the shadow cards are a little distasteful in terms of gore. Luckily, the ones that are most distasteful are ones that are actually not good in terms of gore. So I think that Howl from Beyond has like a ridiculous explosion of gore, but the card is actually pretty bad in my opinion. And then I think it's actually interesting because they changed this one in between first edition and unlimited. So I think it's Blood Tribute has very gory art in the first edition, but the unlimited edition they kind of toned it down. And so I don't know if that's what they were thinking, I don't know if they were like looked at it and they're like, this is too much, I don't know. I kind of doubt it, quite frankly. But I don't know exactly why they changed it, but anyway, so some of those I find a little distasteful. There's also a few cards, that I consider a bit immodest actually on the art. There's one card. There's one card. It's actually kind of funny because there's one card that has actual nudity, which I don't highlight it on stream, and that's Ghostly Visit. But Ghostly Visit is extremely not sexualized in terms of like pose and stuff. So I actually don't really have a problem with the Ghostly Visit. I just don't show it on Twitch because I do believe it violates the terms of service, even though I don't consider it that objectionable or whatever. But there are a few other cards. That I think have some questionable outfits. Which actually I include Adult Chain in that. Put on a shirt, Chain. If I end up playing Adult Chain in Classic Constructed, I might either use the Blitz version where I like the art more, or maybe do an art alter where I paint a shirt on him. I know that sounds kind of goofy, but put on a shirt, Chain. Oh yeah, Raven says go for the tunic altar. Yeah, so there was actually Raven, were you the one who did that? There was the I don't know who actually made this, but there was the early mod that was being run. Yeah, so I think Raven was running the mod. So the early mod for Tabletop Simulator that had the cards before they were implemented to the main mod when things were being previewed, he made Twitch-friendly versions. So there's a Twitch-friendly Howl from Beyond where the art is just like, it's just like totally staticked out or something because of the ridiculous gore on that card. And then he has this one is actually hilarious. I don't think I can find the image here for the stream, but it's Ghostly Visit, but it's like crudely edited so that the ghost is wearing Fyendal's spring tunic, and it's labeled like Ghostly Visit, and then in parentheses Twitch friendly or something. I actually think it's really funny. I was playing with that earlier. I should probably do the saved object stuff. If I do some streams with Chain, I might do a saved object stuff with that, and then I actually have done art alters in person on another card or two, and I might like try to scan those or whatever and use those also so that I can highlight the cards and explain the text without showing the art, which I consider to be questionable. And I will say also in terms of the art design and stuff like that, I don't think this game is like the worst out there. There's some stuff that's really bad in some things, and I think it could be a lot worse. But at the same time, I would prefer a version of Flesh and Blood where instead of being like 16 plus, it was we're going for 13 plus, and we're going to be we're still going to a more adult market. We're not. The goal is not to be Pokemon. The goal is not to be Yu-Gi-Oh! It's still going to be a more mature audience, but there's going to be fewer things that you should be like, I don't know if I want to show this to a kid. There were some people talking about Facebook about how they were starting like a Young Bloods group or something like that for people. I forget if it was like high school or middle school or what, but there were like some kids in the local community and their store was going to be running some type of stuff to get them into it. And at least for me, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that, quite frankly, because of the 16 plus rating for the game and some of the gory cards, and also some of the cards that are a bit immodest. And I agree. Not everyone is necessarily going to have those same qualms, but at least for me, I do think there's a fair few cards in the game that I'm not comfortable showing on stream for either of those reasons. And plus Ghostly Visit, which I would be comfortable showing on stream, but I'm not sure Twitch would be comfortable with me showing it on stream. But both for the stream and also I think to make it easier for younger players who are interested to get into the game, I would personally prefer if they aimed a little younger. They could still have the same sorts of themes, they could still have the same type of stuff, but just tuning down a little bit of the extreme gore and some of the outfits and stuff, just change that a little bit. I think it would be a good change for the game personally. Obviously I'm not LSS, I don't know if LSS is listening to this or if they care what I'm saying, but at least for me that would be an improvement. And I do think there was a video earlier where someone else was talking about this. I know there have been a few people, I guess, who have talked about how they're quitting the game or considering quitting the game because of the themes and some of the art. And I do think that's a bit of a problem. But there was someone who was making a video earlier where they were saying they thought that Monarch, because of the shadow theme, might be like the most extreme that it gets, or like some of the darkest stuff that it gets. Which we'll see what happens. Personally, I do hope that they don't go much darker than this, because I do think some of the stuff is kind of over the top already. I would prefer they brighten things up. I think Welcome to Wraith still has some kind of gory stuff, but I think overall lands in a better place than Monarch, at least for me. Anyway, enough talking about the art design. Let's get to that last game of the event. Okay, so this one is gonna be round. What round is this? So this one's actually gonna be round final, which is the 9th round that I played this game. And so you can see here, there's actually 3 screens. So the top left is my opponent. Unfortunately, his setup was pretty dark, so it's going to be a little hard to tell exactly what his cards have. And bottom is me, and then top right is actually Jose from LuckyGaming TCG. And so he was the one who set up this event. So he set up the event. Colin Honigman, who's a community member, was the kind of organizer. He was the one who was running. I think he was the one who was running Gem and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure, and informing people of that types of information. And then I was providing official stream coverage. Raven says Savage Lands are probably going to be savage. Yeah, so I agree with that. I actually have to say some of the like brute stuff is like very gory in theory, but it's like so ridiculous and over the top that it's not gross in the same way. Like if I look at the card Snag, don't look up Snag if you have a weak stomach or if you're a little kid or whatever. It's disgusting. But if I look up like Snag, I'm like, that is nasty. Whereas there's cards that are like gorier than Snag. So for instance, what card is it? Smash Instinct shows a brute who has smashed someone so hard that they've exploded. It's like an overhead view of someone who's been hit so hard that they've exploded, and they're in and so there's just like gory remains in a crater or something. But it's so over the top that it doesn't seem like realistic or, like gross out gore or whatever. It's kind of like some of the stuff, you might see in, I don't know, like orcs from Lord of the Rings or something like that, or Warhammer, where it's just like so crazy and over the top that it's not really the type of thing that you would see as like having even like a referent in normal situations, as opposed to something like Snag, or like Barraging Beatdown shows someone who's like, I forget even what it is. It's like a saber-toothed tiger or something, but someone has punched it like so hard that it has left like burning or smoking fist imprints on the side of this animal. It's like, to me, that's just like so ridiculous and crazy that it like doesn't parse in the same way. And that's like, I prefer that to something that is, in a certain sense, like less gory or less extreme, but is more at a human scale, like some of the Shadow stuff that we've seen has been. Anyway, like I said, though, less about the art direction for now and more about the event. So my last opponent is playing Bravo. Bravo is an interesting deck. I played against one Bravo player earlier on, and I'm going to be playing Dorinthia, as I did in the other game, of course. And we're going to see whether or not Dorinthia has what it takes to defeat Bravo here. So, and the top right I mentioned with Jose there, that's actually also showing what we're playing for. It's showing what we're playing for in this event. So there's this trophy which is going to be engraved with the winner's name. There is a rainbow foil Heart of Fyendal, and there is a box of Monarch First Edition. And so that box of Monarch First Edition, the rainbow foil Heart of Fyendal, and the trophy are winners' prizes. And then I believe the second place player also, I forget exactly what the prize breakdown was for the event, but there were very substantial prizes for this event. There were, I think the second place player may have also won a box of Monarch First Edition, and I think maybe third through fourth also. This event had really had pretty major prizing. I think there were also some cold foil weapon promos being given out for people later on, as well as some of the more maybe like armory kit promos or something. I don't really remember, but there were a lot of promos. A lot of prizes, Monarch First Edition boxes. It was a pretty big deal. So Jose there decided to put up the stream and kind of show what we were playing for there. LuckyGaming TCG Open first place trophy with a little space there for the winner's name to be engraved, that rainbow foil Heart of Fyendal, and that Monarch First Edition box. So pretty substantial prizes for the first player here. Where I'm making sure that I have all 40 of my cards. I'm a little worried that I might have I get kind of paranoid, I don't know. So I can be a little scrupulous at times. So I get a little worried, like, oh, if I dropped a card, I got to make sure that I'm not accidentally cheating by playing with 39 cards. You know what I mean? So I end up, maybe counting and checking on that stuff more than I need to at some of these events, especially at an event like this one, when, as I was discussing, and as you can see here, there's some big prizes on the line. So should be pretty interesting. And we're gonna see how that goes. Now let's see here. My opponent's using pretty standard Guardian equipment. Oh yeah, so he's showing. I don't know if those are prizes or if those are things that they're selling in the store or what, but he's showing off some I believe some cold foils there that he has in those hard cases. I think those might just be things that they're selling at the store. So LuckyGaming TCG is the store that ran this event. And they did say they were gonna send me some swag, and I had a free admission as well for doing the official casting for this event. I don't know if I have to disclose that. I don't really know what the rules for those types of things are. It's not as if it's an advertisement video, but I will say that I was doing this was official coverage for the event. So I will say that, and I think the event was really cool, and they had a lot of. I think the event was really cool. I think they had a lot of prizes and stuff, and I was surprised. I was a little surprised, and I was happy to make it this far. So now we're gonna see if I was able to prevail in the finals. Anyone, by the way, who knows the outcome of this event, please don't spoil it for chat. If there's anybody who has who knows how this one turned out. So this is it's myself versus a Bravo player. And I believe my opponent is I believe my opponent's seated above me and therefore is going to get a chance to go first. If he wants to. But I'll give you a little hint. When you're Bravo, you often do want to go first because he's got some nice tricks. Yeah, so right here, my opponent throws down a Towering Titan, and I'm really worried because I think that he's actually going to be able to play the Towering Titan. But then he points out that actually the Towering Titan is being pitched; it's not being played. And I breathe kind of a sigh of relief because a turn 1 Towering Titan is one of the most dangerous things that Bravo can do for you. Raven asks, will you be playing in the Card Merchant Charity Classic Constructed event at the end of the month? I believe that I have signed up for that. I don't know that I'm going to be getting a good result in it, quite frankly. So I believe, going to be playing in the event, but I'll say that, quite frankly, I don't have very much experience with Classic Constructed. I've been focusing more on limited. I've been focusing more on like limited play. I've been doing more sealed and more blitz recently. So my experience level with the Classic Constructed stuff is a lot less. So my opponent goes for a double pitch hammer for 6. He does have 2 cards in hand. I end up blocking for 6. This is slightly unsafe because he might pummel me, but I'm actually hoping that he pummels me because I would rather have him use the pummel on something like that, which is unimpactful, rather than a later attack where it might enable a strong effect with his crush ability. So then I'm going to go for a pitch into a Warrior's Valor into a swing. Very basic standard Dorinthia attack pattern here. Coming in for, I believe, 6, and if it hits, go again. Incidentally, if you guys don't know about the Card Merchant Charity event, it's being put on by some of the guys in New Zealand. I believe some of the proceeds of the event are going to go to the Cancer Society. I don't actually know what that is, but I assume it's a cancer charity of some type, in honor of a community member who I believe lost a parent to cancer recently, which is quite unfortunate. And that event also has some major prizes. It's being run by Card Merchant. A lot of the New Zealand crew is getting in on that, I believe. And it is going to be played online, so that should be an exciting event. They're going to also it's going to be kind of an asynchronous format. It's not going to be everybody playing at once. I think it's going to be like you have 48 hours to complete each round. So that should be a lot of fun in my opinion, and I would definitely recommend that people check that out. If I remember, I'll try and put a link to the event in the video description when I send this on YouTube. So I think that's going to be a chance to play in a tournament while also contributing some money to a good cause. So my opponent goes for a 6 block with armor, and I go for the Stroke of Foresight to give my attack +3. Then it's going to be a pitch, use the bolters, and swing for 4. Now my opponent did play a red sigil on that first turn, so he went up to 23. So hitting him for 3 here really just takes him back down to 20. That red sigil on the first turn, definitely a strong option and something that I was not happy to see him get. So this one is going to come in for 4 with the buff from the bracers. If I do manage to score the hit, I am going to get a +1 counter. But I now don't have cards in hand, so I think there's a good chance he's just going to be able to block this out. All he has to do is use one card that blocks for 3, and then 1 piece of his armor. I did use the Braveforge bracers, so I've broken the chain, and he can use his armor again. However, I think that it's better to do that than it would be to not do it and arsenal the energy potion, because if I don't do it, he just blocks with 1 card. This way, I'm at least maybe going to take another card out of his hand, take a piece of his armor, try to get that knocked down. Incidentally, I did block with my Twinning Blade. That was one of the cards that I blocked with on the first turn, and that might be relevant later. So my opponent goes for my opponent does, as expected, go for a single card block plus a piece of armor, stopping that second attack. But on the plus side, I am depleting his armor. So I'm happy about that situation because I am getting myself into a position where where there's not going to be as much armor to worry about. However, all I did was 3 damage, which just took away all it did was take away the bonus health that he had. So not really a fine situation for me. Okay, my opponent pitches and goes actually for a double pitch into I believe it's a Spinal Crush. So if this, and he has 2 energy floating, so this is a situation where I am thinking there's a good risk that there's going to be a pummel here. The thing is, I think that overblocking against a potential pummel is a bad move because all it means is that they're going to have their pummel for you later. So I end up blocking in a way that's going to negate the I end up blocking in a way that is going to negate the crush effect if he doesn't have the pummel and he's just bluffing. But if he does have the pummel, he'll play it out and crush me, and that's going to be bad. But I'm going to keep my armor and stuff up. I'm not going to overblock too much, and I'm going to have that available to try to stop future attacks. At least that's my reasoning. So it comes in with a block for 6, and he indeed has a red pummel hanging out in the arsenal. So that's gonna hit me hard. It's going to be, I believe, I believe I get hit for a total of 7 damage there, dropping down to 13 life. The crush effect does go off, which means I lose and can't gain go again. I also have to discard a card from hand thanks to pummel. So kind of a devastating attack here. And on my turn, all I do is arsenal and draw up. So it's really tough to get hit by one of those pummels, but I think sometimes you have to kind of let it. You have to let that happen now, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble later. Chrometic says, what is the reason you play with a potion? The reason is that I think potion's a good card. So energy potion is one of the best cards that you can have as Dorinthia if you have to go first. Normally Dorinthia wants to go second. If you are going first, playing an energy potion and playing a card in Arsenal is a great way to start off the game. Secondarily, there's often situations where you can get an unconditional go again and then play out the potion if the opponent stops your attack. So as an example of that, you might do a Spoils of War Dawnblade swing, and then if the opponent blocks out the Dawnblade swing, then you play your potion with that go again instead of doing the Dawnblade swing, which you aren't going to get a chance to do. So that's what I like. So yeah, my opponent comes in. Here comes the Crippling Crush. That's a big one here, coming in for a total of 11. And I think it may be dominated as well. I'm not entirely sure. But luckily for me, this is a situation where I am going to be able to stop it. And I know I'm going to be able to stop it because I have... so Warrior, one of the big assets that Warrior has in these games against Bravo is that you do have what they call the fridge. And so there's the fridge. So I'm blocking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 against his 11 damage attack. That means I only take 3 damage and don't get crushed. That's going to put me at 10 life. And I still have substantial equipment armor left. I still have substantial armor or equipment defense left. So actually, I'm pretty okay with that. Like, yes, he did get 3 damage through, but getting 3 damage through, it hurts. But I'm going to be able to now try and put the pressure back on him. It's 10 life to 20 life, which is not where you want to be. But he doesn't have a card in Arsenal, and I'm going to be able to hopefully put on some aggression. So we're going to see now whether or not I can start winning some winning some space back. Now the problem is, of course, he also still has some armor left, not as much as me, but he has at least 1 or 2 points of armor left. Additionally, he has a lot of life, so he can maybe just tank some of this damage with his face. Another strategy that I quite enjoy. Now, one thing I'll also say on the topic of the energy potion is that I actually play 2 energy potions. It can be questionable in some situations because it doesn't block. So sometimes you pitch it early and then later on in the game you're seeing that potion and it's really not what you want to see. And that does happen sometimes. It is a tough situation, I will say that. But it improves your first turn substantially if you do get it. And it does work sometimes well with those go-agains. It's possible I'm going to switch to only 1 energy potion in the future, but we'll have to see. Anyway, right now I'm coming in for 5 with go again if it hits get 2 copper. The old Spoils of War feeling some aggression here from me against my Guardian opponent. And hopefully this is going to get him to either take some damage or lose some cards. Either way, I'm going to try to even up the odds here. It's not really a very good situation for me at 10 life to 20 life, but life total is less important than some of the other factors in this game. I have more armor than my opponent remaining, and I do have potentially some tempo here, so we're going to hope to use that tempo to do some major damage. So my opponent decides he's going to just let me in. I'll take it. 15. 5 damage gets through. 2 copper tokens coming out there. Dorinthia's ability letting me swing again. and I'm going to spend the remaining 1 to use the Brave Forge Bracers. Then I'm going to pitch what I believe is a blue Iron Song response and swing for another 4. I do have 2 energy and a card in arsenal, so I am fairly threatening here for a potential Dawnblade counter, which is going to allow me to put some more pressure on that opponent. I would really like to get a Dawnblade counter, but of course, there's a good chance he can block this if he goes for it. Jose, meanwhile, was showcasing some of the other prizes. I think we had some of the Blitz decks being shown over there, and then he's taken those away and is now still highlighting the winners' prizes there. And my opponent opts for a no block again. That means that this Dawnblade attack is going to land, and that's going to be not only another chunk of damage there, I believe 4 damage there, but it is also going to be a counter on the Dawnblade for another +1 and 2 copper tokens. So now I'm thinking, cool, I just did a lot of damage. In terms of life total, I believe it's now 10 to 11 because I think I did 5 and then 4. I have my pen on top of my life totals, unfortunately, so I'm not entirely sure where it's at. But I now have, I think I now have a life advantage with my armor. I have a counter on Dawnblade, card in arsenal, full hand. The only problem is my opponent's probably about to do something big. So we're going to see just what he throws out against me here. Yeah, so he's going for some pitches. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So he actually plays... I can't highlight the card because this is a streamed game and not a TTS game, but it's the... I forget what this card is even called. It's like out... Is it called Out Muscle? It's the one where the opponent has to block it with an attack that has more strength than it, or maybe equal or more strength than it, or else it gets go again. And I actually don't have an attack in my hand, so... I think it's only a blue one, so it's coming in for 4 with go again, but it's still, it's still not what I most want because ideally I would be able to stop his turn there, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I do block with a single card. I believe that is a red overpower being used to block there, but that's still going to be 1 damage getting through, so it's now going to be my 9 to his 11. And then he is going to follow that up. Yeah, follow that up with a pitch and a hammer for 6. So more damage coming in, and I have to think about how much I want to block. So ideally, under ideal circumstances, I would just not block this, take the damage, and then come back big. The problem is that with Guardian's ability to do dominate attacks, I have to worry about getting too close to the danger zone here. I don't want to be in a position where my opponent can easily do a big dominated attack and just end the game. So I have to consider how much damage am I actually willing to take from this attack. Or do I want to end up blocking it in order to keep some of my life total and therefore try to be in a position where I'm going to be able to worry less in the future about those big dominate attacks coming in, still maybe able to stop them with, a card plus armor plus life, or maybe the armor's used up at this point, but I'm going to be able to put that springboard somersault in arsenal and get that set up for the defense. It's going to be interesting to see. Okay. I'm mulling over the situation here. It is a tough call. So I believe his hammer is coming in for 6. And if I eat the 6 damage, it's going to be 3 life to 11. At 3 life, I really am in range of getting killed by Dominate. Right now, I could block... if I really, really had to, I could block 4 with equipment plus 1 card for 7. But that still means that a Dominated Crippling Crush for 11, that's just the game if I go to 3 life. Or I think Righteous Cleansing is also 11. Maybe it's 10. Right? Or maybe, I don't even remember. Righteous Cleansing is also a lot of damage. Raven says, blue out muscle seems a bit questionable when basically only Dorinthia can't disable it reliably unless I'm missing something, and Kano, I suppose. Yeah, so against Kano, it's pretty good. Ira can sometimes disable it, but not reliably. And against Dorinthia, it's not... Yeah, against Dorinthia, you can't really disable it reliably. I don't also know how it works with Pummel. I don't know if pummeling it makes it so that you can sneak in over someone's card and still get the go again. If so, Pummel is really, really strong with it, and we know my opponent is running Pummel, so that might be a synergy option there. Hard to say. I don't really know very much about I don't really know very much about that card because it doesn't quite fit into the style of deck that I'm most playing. But yeah, so in that situation, I end up going for a armor block for 3, using my 1 point of block from my Skull Cap, and then the 2 block from my bolters. And I'm thinking I need to put the pressure on. I need to try to get this guy. So I'm going down to 6 life, which is actually kind of unsafe. 6 life and only 1 more piece of equipment block from the bracers there, since I am using my copy of Courage this turn. But I'm coming in here for a total of 6 go again, and if it hits, I will get 2 more copper. I actually pitched an Iron Song Determination for this. My opponent is not in range to kill with Iron Song Determination. My hope is that if the game goes long, that's going to come around in the future and let me close out the game. I also think, Raven, there are a few other decks like this isn't like very popular, but Benji, for instance, has a lot of small stuff and can't necessarily stop it with most of the stuff that he's playing, because he has so much 2 stuff. But he has some 4s also, so if it's equal to, yeah, I mean, I'd have to look up the card. The Pummel interaction is also important if that works. So yeah, I'm coming in here. 6 go again, 2 copper on hit, and if it hits, 6 go again, 2 copper on hit, and my sword attacks are free this turn thanks to Courage. So my hope is that this is gonna, really, really put the pressure on him. My opponent's bold. He ends up going for a no block. That means I land a hit for 6. I'm going to keep my +1 counter. I get Dorinthia's ability to let me swing again. I get 2 copper, but I don't bother putting it out there because I'm not going to use 4 copper, much less 6 copper. And so then we're going to use that energy for the Brave Forge Bracers, and we're going to swing again. The swing is free thanks to the Courage of Bladehold, so then this attack is going to be coming in for a total of 5, which means that I'm threatening lethal and he has to block. Okay. We're seeing what happens here. My opponent's thinking it over. This is one of those situations where, every card counts, and this is what I really like about Flesh and Blood, actually. In these situations, each card is so important. You really have to think, what's the best use for this card? Is the best way that I can play this going to be the block? Is the best way that I can play this going to be playing the card for its effect? Does this need to be my pitch next turn? You really have to think about it. It's coming down to the wire. My opponent goes for a double block only using equipment, so my reprise isn't active. The card that I have in Arsenal is actually, I believe, a copy of Singing Steelblade. So right now, my opponent's blocking for 2, and I'm coming in for 5. If this hits, my opponent is going to... I am going to get the +1 counter, but we're going to see whether or not it's enough. My opponent, because he's blocked with only armor, my reprise isn't active, but I opt to play the Singing Steelblade anyway. The reason that I'm playing the Singing Steelblade is it's going to take me up to 6. He's blocking for 2. That means he'll take 4 damage and will go to 1 life. At 1 life, he's in range of instant death. I can kill him with a copy of... if he swings his hammer at me again, I'll be able to kill him with a copy of Steelblade Shunt. And because I know that I do have a 1x copy of Steelblade Shunt, I believe that I have not seen it yet and that I have not shuffled yet, which means that it's going to be coming up relatively soon in the deck at some point. So I play that Singing Steelblade, even though it's only for 1 damage, it's not going to kill him, because if he doesn't do something now, it's going to take him into range. And if he's in the range for that shunt, it's going to be potentially a way that I can close out the game without actually having to score another big attack breakthrough, which might be difficult to do. Even with that second +1 counter that I'm going to get if this hits, it might be difficult to get another attack breakthrough because he's going to have a full hand, presumably, with which to put the pressure on me. And I'm going to have to be pretty worried about the outcome. Incidentally, the second card that I pitched was actually Springboard Somersault, which was a difficult call. I think it's conceivable that I should have not used the Bracer and then swung, played out the card from Arsenal, and then Arsenal the Springboard Somersault, because I could then have the Springboard Somersault available in case he does a big dominated attack. My opponent ends up not doing anything fancy. He goes down to 1 life. 1 life to 6 life. Here we go. 1 life to 6 life. I've drawn up. Do have the 2 counters on the Tunic, but this is a Bravo player. I only have 1 point of armor remaining. If he does a huge attack, I could be in big trouble here. A huge dominated attack might just end the game. Like if he goes 11 dominate, I can block for 4, 5 if I have a shunt in hand, and then that's just the game. So we're gonna see what he has on offer. It was risky of him to block so lightly against the previous thing, unless he had a defense reaction that he chose not to use. Because if I had a +3 for 1, that would have been the game if he didn't have a defense reaction. But it's now earned him this chance to come at me with a 4-card hand. And if he can score the win with that 4-card hand, that's the game. So he's opted to go really far down on life in order to get this tempo. And now we're going to see what he does with it. Looks like he makes another Seismic Surge. We are going to see another pitch there. And there's the hammer. So I believe the hammer is just coming in for 4 right now. I'm thinking about how best to try and close out this game. He has 2 cards in hand, nothing floating. Of course, a pummel here would be lethal. Or at least would take him to lethal damage. There comes the pummel. So his pummel is putting him... So he pitches a unmovable, which he had in hand and could have used previously, but I think he would have had to pitch like crazy to stop it. And the pummel puts him up to lethal, and I counter it with the Steel Blade Shunt, which I did have. So the 1 damage from the Steel Blade Shunt comes in and closes out the game before he hits me. And that is going to be the game. So he had the pummel to sneak that hammer attack in and try to kill me, but I had the Steel Blade Shunt to get him before it landed. So I wind up taking the tournament. Jose is back on there. So we were talking about the tournament, doing some shout outs and stuff, but I do end up winning the event. So that was the finals match there. Very tense situation at the end, with each of us having, the big trick that we needed to try to close out the game. But ultimately that unblockable damage from the Steel Blade Shunt managed to close it before his pummeled hammer attack could land and get me. So very intense tournament. There were 6 other games from this tournament that I did not get the chance to broadcast tonight, but I will be broadcasting them later. I'm not entirely sure when that's going to be, but I will be broadcasting those other 6 games with commentary. It might be 2 different streams, but those will end up being broadcasted at a later date. God willing and all that. We'll see what happens. But I do intend to show those, and that there are going to be some other interesting games there. I thought it was a very fun and kind of down to the wire finals there, with some very cool moments, and I was happy to ultimately take the event and win those cool prizes that Jose is showing on the in the top right corner there. So lots of fun. Good event, Happy to win it. Dorinthia still doing strong. You know, I was kind of sleep deprived at this point in the event, quite frankly. But Dorinthia, I'm very used to playing Dorinthia. My deck hasn't changed all that much. She's still doing very well, even against the new Monarch stuff. You know, we'll see if that changes as the Monarch stuff gets more developed. I think I mentioned earlier that even though I don't like Chain's theme and so on very much, I do think that he can potentially give Dorinthia a run for her money in Blitz. Not sure about CC. We'll have to see. But yeah, so interesting stuff there for sure. Cats KC says, seems like an unnecessary risk the Bravo player took. He could have defended with one card and still come with hammer and pummel, just not make a surge. I think his pitch was bad. I don't exactly remember, but I think his pitch was bad. If he defended with one card, I also would have been, I believe, been able to get a red Iron Song, from which would negate the one card. So I think he would have had to defend more, in order to actually stop it. But I believe he was hoping that his pummel plan was going to be able to end the game. The surprise pummel from Bravo can be pretty nasty, especially if you swing starting at 4, because then if you pitch another expensive card to play the pummel, not only do you get the bonus stats from the pummel, but you also get the not only do you get the bonus stats from the pummel, but you also get the +2 from the Anothos having something else, having 2 expensive cards in the pitch zone. So you can actually red pummel on Anothos. You know, you can start out at 4 and then take it up to 10, which is pretty nasty. Can really close out a game. But in this case, that Steelblade Shunt was there to save the day for me first. So yeah. Raven asks, will you be playing that Heart of Fyendal in your Dorinthia now? I'm actually not sure. So there was a time when I would have said yes for sure. During the period where the pre-drone ban control Ira decks were being played by like Dante and stuff, in that period I would have played a Heart of Fyendal if I had one, because there was a frequent dynamic in those games where I would be behind on life but ahead on tempo and trying to create a breakthrough. And if I could create a breakthrough and then keep the pressure on from there, I could get the win. But if my opponent successfully just kept whittling me down until they could try to reverse the situation with their Snapdragons and stuff, then I would be in big trouble. So yeah. However, with the drone ban, the new Ira decks aren't as good against me, I feel. I do think Heart is still potentially a good card, and I will probably at least test playing with 1 Heart, 1 Potion instead of 2 Potions. But I think that it is at least something that is worth testing and not something that I'm as confident about including at this time. Cats KC says, pretty sure you had nothing left on your last attack to play. Might remember wrong, though. Yeah, so I didn't have any other cards that I could play, but if he blocked... But because I played a Singing Steelblade without Reprise, just for the +1 to get him into Shunt range, if he had blocked, I would have gotten the Reprise, which would have then meant that I could have potentially found another attack reaction. And I don't remember exactly what attack reactions I did or didn't have available. I think I did have 1 energy, though, so I could have done at least a +3 attack reaction and maybe more than that. So a single card block, even though I didn't have any other cards that I could have played there, it would have enabled the Reprise effect from the Singing Steelblade, so it would have made one of the cards that I did play more effective and essentially fetch me something else from the deck that I then could have used. So that was the situation there, and I think that may have been why he blocked with only armor. Okay, guys, that was the stream. A little wide ranging there. We had the 3 games from the top 8. We had a little discussion of, we had some discussion of opening. We had some discussion of the art direction for Monarch. Whether it would be better for the game to be 13 plus instead of 16 plus. Some shout outs to Lucky Gaming for offering sweet prizes at this event. And yeah, that's gonna about do it for this broadcast. Raven says, great games, thanks for the stream. Yeah, no problem. Happy to show it. I will try to get the oh, you know what? Actually, I got one last little thing here for those people following along. I'm actually gonna let me just send you my deck list here. So if you guys want to check out the deck list that I was playing, it is. I'm going to send this in the Twitch chat here, and then my plan is to upload this to YouTube later. And when I upload this to YouTube, I will try to put the I'm going to try to put the deck list in the I'm going to try to put the deck list in the channel description if I remember. And then let me actually also send you guys a link to the card merchant. This is going to be the card merchant charity tournament that we were discussing earlier in the chat. I'm going to throw that in the Twitch chat as well, and I will try to get that in the YouTube comments once the time comes for that. So let me just make sure that I have the right link here. It's going to be, I believe, a Facebook event, and you guys can check that out. It is going to be a classic constructed event, so kind of a change of pace after some of these things. We've seen a lot of blitz and a lot of blitz and a lot of limited play. But yeah, this card merchant. Card Merchant International Cancer Society Charity Drive Flesh and Blood online event. So we're gonna send a link of that as well, just there in the stream. This one, I do not have. This is not an affiliate link. They are not paying me to do this. I just think it's I think it's cool. I think it's cool to have an event for the community that not only is offering a tournament with some big prizes, but also the opportunity for some of those entry fees to go to a good cause. So the Card Merchant, I'll link you guys to the Facebook event here. Just sending that over in the chat right now. And when it comes time to put this on YouTube, I'll try to put that in the video description. Last up, before we close, shout out to Navori Moki for the follow during this stream. And actually, let's do a few shout outs as well for some people who followed in between my previous stream and this one. So we got OmniSync, Der Flexer 2000, Loro 20, and Loro 23, as well as perhaps Mistman_PL and Kinderkind37. So my apologies if I gave anybody extra shout-outs. I might have announced some of those previously when they first came up, but just in case that I didn't, thank you guys for the follows. Much appreciated. And big shout-out, of course, to Raven for the generous subscription to the channel with the 4-month Prime subscription. Raven, also a Flesh and Blood content creator, and as I mentioned earlier, a Flesh and Blood content creator with much better production values than I have. He has some cool stuff on I think if you search for Super Flesh and Blood, you're going to find some of his content oriented towards creating some budget decks over on YouTube, and that's some cool stuff. So thank you, Raven, for the subscriptions and for the other stuff you do for the community. We are going to sign off. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Jose and to Colin from LuckyGaming TCG for putting on a great event. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this one, guys. I will catch you guys later.